I like Snoopy, that cool sunglass wearing dude, glancing off to a sunrise, a sunset, eyes always on the horizon, leaning easy and carefree on a tree or some other reliable, confidence invoking thing. No worries in his world. He be chillin', 'cause Joe Cool knows bowls be filled. Please don't even know his name. And his house comes with birds that sing and welcome sunshine. Even the rain knows not to fall till he's safe inside. But my name ain't Joe Cool, ain't even Charlie Brown. I'm just trying to find why my world can't catch at least a piece of that, yeah, that Joe Cool thing. How can I catch just a snatch of that cool dude attitude? Bring some of that, hey, it's all good to my neighborhood. Just chillin'.
License and registration, he can sense your aggravation.
On the head of the fallen angel.
When the world is muttering under the floorboards, stomp even louder.
Time.
Let them know you are alive today.
Or unhum.
Did you know that your hands came with a ripple effect?
Whisper tones unraveling like silk.
Blood, sweat, and tears win by any means poetry.
Sway, look at me. Is a piece of the pie too good for me?
Some may call it rock the mic. We call it poetry.
Hello. Welcome to Sojourn with Words. Once again, we're back. We're celebrating poetry. We have poets, and we have a phenomenal poet today. Let me start by, for those who are new, I'm Sistah Joy, your host here on Sojourn with Words. And we are celebrating our 16th year of presenting poetry and poetry interviews, poets of excellence. Today is no exception. We're speaking with Regie Gibson. Now, Regie, first and foremost, welcome to Sojourn with Words.
Thank you, Sistah Joy, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We're very happy to have you now as a member of the Sojourn with Words family. So what we want to do is to ensure that our guests, our viewers, know a little bit more about you than just the fact that you're a phenomenal poet, because you wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. So Regie Gibson is a poet, a lecturer, a literary performer, and an educator who has performed widely in the US, in Cuba, and Europe. In Italy, representing the United States, Regie received the Absolute Poetry and Europa on Versi Awards. He and his poetry are featured in the film Love Jones. And of course, that's a film based loosely on his life, events in his life, should I say. He has an MFA in poetry from New England College. He received the Walker Scholarship for Poetry, the Brother Thomas Fellowship, and 2 lab grants for the production of his first musical, The Juke, a blues bouquet. He has served as a consultant for the National Endowment of the Arts and received the Mere Distinction of Color, an exhibit at Montpelier, the home of President James Madison, examining the legacy of slavery and the US Constitution. Now, I'm looking forward to hearing about that. He currently teaches at Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. Well, I think that's enough for our viewers to get a chance to at least have a sense of expectation what to receive today. Regie, what is happening in the world of Regie Gibson? You've traveling the world, you've taught, you've lectured, you've performed on Deaf Poetry Jam stages. I mean, wow, we're so honored to have you today. Tell us what's happening.
Well, as you say, it's a lot going on all the time. It seems since the pandemic set upon us, it's just things have also been blossoming. I've done a lot more stuff online, been doing a lot more things internationally. I've been working with members of the Red Cross, Red Crescent out of The Hague in the Netherlands, and working with scientists to also help craft language regarding issues of climate change and disaster relief. So our thought is that research shows that research doesn't work when it comes down to speaking with people. So we need to do things with like stories and poems and use art as a way to reach people's hearts and minds instead of just the numbers across the people. So it's been really busy. A lot of collaborations, a lot of YouTube collaborations with people who I've never met before, just exchanging words and music and getting projects going. It's been really a lot happening, and it's a joy to do it.
Well, we know that you are indeed a world traveler, and having traveled, as I said earlier, 7 countries, including Cuba and Italy. Talk a little bit about how you find poetry to be embraced in these different cultures, different countries, and what is the significance of the arts that would bring you as an artist to travel so widely?
Well, it seems to me, that there is a poet very often in other cultures is more looked upon, as I've seen, especially in Cuba. I'll go with Cuba, is a cultural resource. That the work is less about yourself and more so about what it means to be in community with others, and what the work itself is about as far as healing and knitting together a community that can be fragmented. So there's a sort of mythic space that's put there, but a poet is also looked as a person who's a healer and a truth teller. Whereas I found that in America, very often it's lyric poetry, the poet of the self, about self-expression. This is a country which has institutionalized the individual to such a point that we tend to only look inward and at what's going on with us. And that's not necessarily the case in other cultures. In Italy, for instance, I often found that they're really looking for the people I was around looking for something bold as far as poetry. Not, there's been a lot of words said in Italian poetry, but they're looking for something bold, a sort of vision, something more visual. They love the mixing of the arts. There was a lot of strange poetry that I was hearing, things I'm like, that's so surreal and so out there, but the people really seem to love it. So the experimental quality the experimental impulse seems to be much more there, where there's more types of poetry accepted than I've seen in the United States.
Okay. Now, of course, you are a former National Slam Poetry individual champion. And those of us here in the States, we think back to Deaf Poetry Jam, but clearly the blues and jazz and scatting have all influenced your performance style and your approach to artistic expression. Tell us about that as far as poetry and even in some of the other genres that you find yourself expressing.
Well, as an African American and just as an American poet, the blues is what I look at as one of our existential musics, right? It's the music that helps us to find out what this being, Homo sapiens thing means in the world. It's also it's a part of a culture of lament, and every culture has a performance of lament, whether it's the Portuguese mournas or the Jewish Kaddish. We have the blues here, but it's the kind of thing that is purgative in that sense. And so even though it may deal with subjects which are sad, it somehow renews you and makes you feel better for having lived. So for me, that's one of the reasons I go back to that. Music is at the basis of anything I think we do. Poets are, we're really concerned about not just a sense of something and whether or not it's a great metaphor or image, but it's also about how it sounds, right? We try to bring together the sound and the sense. And for me, poetry is very much about, when I speak to my students about it, to me, it's about what makes someone wants to hear the next thing you say, right? How do you bring someone into that space that words can become magical for them? And my thought is always, if you want someone to read page 2 of anything, they have to have liked page 1, and then they have to have liked sentence 1, right? And that's what's going to propel them to go on to another space in the work. So poetry is very much for me about what makes people lean in, right, and want to hear the next thing.
So you take it as an elemental step by step. Okay. Now, certainly your work is widely published in academic and literary publications, anthologies, and magazines. And we know that as an educator, you're affecting the future of poetry because the students are tomorrow's poets. When you talk about the work that you're doing academically, as well as the work that you're doing artistically, how do you find the nexus? What allows you to continue to create with the mindset of an academician?
Well, I love the research of poetry. I love poetry writing that most people find burdensome, which is the editing and the revision part. I like diving into it and seeing how it is from the inside. So it's a curiosity that I think I have with how words work. And the curiosity has also, my interest have led me to do more stuff and to become, more academic in my work. I think that I try to go for 5 things in a poem, but also in a classroom. And that is, can it engage, entertain, affect, educate, and elevate? And for me, those 5 things: engage, get attention; entertain, keep attention; affect, make people feel something or reconsider; educate, teach something; and then elevate. How do we bring someone to a higher space than maybe we have found them, so that maybe they can't go back to looking at the same subject the same way as before? Now, I'm not saying I can always do that, but it's certainly something. In fact, I don't always do that, but it's certainly something I strive to do. It's a goal that I set for myself on the page, on the stage, and also in classrooms.
Well, I think that's phenomenal. It's benchmark that many poets, I think, would do well to aspire to. I know I'll hold on to that going forward. And subconsciously, it's always been there, but just to crystallize the concept makes all the difference. So thank you for that. Now, we know that you've worked as a consultant for the National Endowment for the Arts, examining slavery and the U.S. Constitution. Tell us about that experience and how did you come to that?
I'm sorry for the noise behind me. Well, actually, those were 2 separate things. One of them was the NEA. It was a program called How Art Works, and with the NEA, they were asking artists and setting us up to do workshops to talk about what is it that art gives us as a culture. Why is it that we need it? And so it was just this huge think tank of folks from all over the country getting together to construct something for the NEA, and so it became this document that the NEA has been using in Congress to kind of keep its funding going. So I was part of that think tank. The mere distinction of color exhibit at James Madison's home, that's a museum. It's now become a museum, and they've begun excavating the quarters of the enslaved on James Madison's property, and rebuilding that, and then telling the stories of the individuals who Madison had enslaved. And I was hired to write some of those stories. We had to, of course, do a lot of the digging into some background, some plausible background of some of the people who Madison enslaved, and so that was a great thing. So first person narratives, persona pieces, and I narrate much of the much of the exhibit. So if you go there, you'd hear my voice and see my face and stuff like that. So that's cool. The part that was also a think tank. It was very difficult to reconcile James Madison's words with his actions. That the mere distinction of color. I'm gonna paraphrase, but that's actually something from one of his writings, where he spoke about how I think he said something like, "I have seen that throughout history, the mere distinction of color has been responsible for the most heinous treatment of man to man." And this coming from an individual who had 300 slaves and never freed any one of them is quite shocking. When you hear that phrase, you would think he was a Quaker or an abolitionist. But then when you look at his life, he was not that way. And he was a very conflicted individual. We went to the library where he's reported to have written the Bill of Rights, and he has over 1,000 books in his library. This is a man who taught himself Hebrew. This is a man who was enlightened by humanist ideals. But in his library, where he most likely wrote the Bill of Rights, it's overlooking a field that had cotton and or sugarcane. And he had enslaved humanity out there working to support his lifestyle. So it's very interesting to see that these gentlemen who framed the Constitution, most of whom were slave owners, how they could enshrine freedoms, but at the same time be perpetrators of slavery.
Well, Regie, this conversation could go on ad infinitum. Thank you so much. Of course, our viewers know that you are this phenomenal poet, as well as the scholar and the academician that you are. First of all, can you be sure to give us your contact information for persons that want to be able to stay in touch with Regie Gibson, to know about what's happening? Is there a website or social media? How can folks be in touch?
Yes. RegieGibson.com. That's my website.
Can you spell it for us?
Oh, sure. RegieGibson.com. So that's a way to do so. And you can catch me on YouTube and doing stuff as well. So
wonderful. Well, now we
Sure.
get to sit back and let you edify, entertain, inspire, inform, all those wonderful things you talked about. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers of Sojourn with Words, it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce once again the phenomenal poet extraordinaire. Now we're speaking as a poet, but poet extraordinaire, Regie Gibson. Regie, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Well, I'll start off maybe with something that I start off with students and other folks when I travel, and I like to call it a lecture on sociolinguistics and ethnomusicology, but delivered in 4/4 time. And it goes back to the beginnings, I guess, of what it means to be human. So if we were together, we would do some talk back where you would shout back a word to me, which would be what? But since we're not together, you can just say that in your head. And the word what for me is a beautiful thing because it's the impulse that started so much of human knowledge. Let's take it back to the dawn of time. Before technology tamed our minds, when a man took his hands and began to clap. And that was the beginning of the boom, boom, bap. Let's take it back to the dawn of time, before technology tamed our minds, when a woman started humming to an animal's call. And that was the beginning of the yes, yes, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. It's like that, it's like that, it's like that, y'all. Once again, here we are again, needing to feel what it means to be skin, to feel the systole and diastole of the human heart getting rolled into poetry and music and whatever comes out of the human soul. We know the body has intelligence. The intellect cannot dismiss, a consequence of biocultural experience. But let's take a quick trip and get a sense of what it means for each of us to have become human beings. Back in a time that we cannot recall, our ancestors drummed in the hum of night under these same stars. They believed were gods that shone down as they danced by the firelight. Their bodies began moving, voices started grunting, imitating animals they knew they would be hunting on the next day to provide sustenance for their tribe. This was a ritual intended to recognize that life is born of death. Like sunrise and sunset, cycling from east to west. The drums would beat and feet began to step. Moving from right to left, the men leapt as the chants began to rise from the women's breath. This is why music and poetry calls the blood. It's been this way since we crawled from the mud, an ancient thing banging in the body and mind that we've been grooved into people since the dawn of time. So check it. Let's take it back to the dawn of time. Before technology tamed the mind, a man took his hands and began to clap. And that was the beginning of the boom, boom, bap. Let's take it back to the dawn of time. Before technology tamed the mind, a woman started humming to an animal's call. And that was the beginning of the yes, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. It's like a that, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. It's like that. Now, whether Irish or English or Spanish, Danish or Swedish or Polish, Russian, or Turkish, Italian, German or Kurdish, Japanese or Assyrian, Javanese or Armenian, Portuguese or Hungarian, Hebrew, Zulu, Bavarian, no matter the tongue you speak, languages have a beat. The body instinctively translates into music. See, what science has found is we are creatures of sound, and our ears need to seek rhythmic patterns in human speech, like the words I'm spitting, hear the rhythm that's in them, even before you get a hint of any content I'm kicking. You first think nothing of it, but the verbal percussion begins to drum it inside of you, and then your blood begins rushing, your pulses get to throbbing, your head begins to bobbing. You feeling the effect of what the rhythm has been plotting. It's gotten you to synchronize alpha waves and realize rhythms more than musical, but structurally underlies each and every atom to plasma scattered on Saturn. Every stage of matter is organized in some kind of pattern, which is architectonic, because everything has a tonic, everything has a cycle, everything has a phonic. Life depends upon it. We're engineered to want it. This thing that remains, refrains, comes back is chronic. This thing that haunts us all like a ghost in the mind. We've been dancing with y'all, dancing with y'all, dancing with y'all since the dawn of time. So check it. Let's take it back to the dawn of time. Before technology tamed the mind, a man took his hands and began to clap, and that was the beginning of the boom, boom, bap. Let's take it back to the dawn of time. Before technology tamed the mind, a woman started humming to an animal's call, and that was the beginning of a yes, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. It's like a that, diggity, that, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. A yes, yes, y'all. It's like a no, that, y'all. It's like 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 it's like that.
Oh my
Thank
God.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How incredible.
Certainly.
Oh,
Certainly.
okay.
And that brings together music and poetry. That's bringing together music and poetry and putting that at the beginnings of human understanding, what it means to be us, word and sound, right? Word and music.
Oh my God.
Language. Yeah.
Sojourn with Words viewers, that was Regie Gibson. Absolutely. Reggie, I don't know. We're up there, and can we sustain this for about 5 more minutes with some continuation, or are you spent?
I'm good. I'm good. I can't be spent. I got to go teach a class. I got to go conduct a workshop in about an hour. I better be on.
Okay.
So I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, give us maybe one more piece. Maybe one more piece.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to see what might be the music that might be at the end here.
Yeah.
That I might be able to do. I'll do about 5 minutes. I'll do something. I write stuff for music, but I also, do all kinds of other stuff. But I guess this seems like a musical day. So I'll go with what we poets mostly like to talk about. Really, we get into love and death, Eros and Thanatos. And I guess this is for philosophers, people who like this stuff. But this is what we know as poets, is that here we are in a sea of stars, somewhere between Venus and Mars. We're just short-lived hominids hanging about, doing our best to figure it out. Where do we come from? Where do we go? What does it mean to question? What does it really mean to know? Is there a thing listening to prayer? Are we alone and there's nothing there? I don't know the math, but I know somehow that 1 life plus 2 short equals live your life now. So I just leave that as advice. Very short piece, and I'll just leave that as advice. Let's live our lives now. The thing I think that concentrates and helps us to live it better is great words, great food, great conversation with people, great music, right? That can make this all too brief existence. As Shakespeare says, our time being these fools who strut across the stage, right? That can make those things a little bit better for us all. And if we can spread that to other people, that helps to also ennoble their lives as well. So that's what I would love to see us continue to do.
All right. I want to ask a quick question as far as what's next for Regie. I understand you're writing a play. Is that something that you can talk about?
Oh yeah, well, I've written it, and I'm currently reworking it. I'm looking to get it on bigger stages. I've had it mounted a couple of times here, but I'm looking here in Boston, Massachusetts. But I'm looking to bring it to a larger stage, and I'm going to be working with a friend who's also a brilliant director and playwright who's going to help me to think about ways to put this out in the world more broadly. The play it's a blues Bacchae. It's based upon the Euripidean tragedy of the Bacchae, and it is as a backdrop for African American history, culture, music, and spirituality. So hopefully people will be able to see that. It's full of music, it's full of blues, it's full of funk, it's full of poetry. It's really cool, and it's got a lot of historic basis to it, and it's told in sort of a mythic sort of way. So hopefully it'll be able to be out there, and that's what I'm currently putting a lot of my creative energy into right now.
Oh, fabulous. Well, I certainly hope that and look forward to, I'll just claim it, I look forward to when it comes to the Washington metropolitan area.
Oh, I hope so.
Our community can enjoy and support you. So please keep us posted. Sojourn with Words does have a strong viewership that we've developed over these past 16 years. And we know that there are many who appreciate the arts, certainly poetry, but the arts as a whole. And I'll just consider you to be one of our Renaissance family members, because you've embraced and you not only have you embraced, but you have mastered many genres. And we are so very appreciative that you saw it not robbery to join us today, even from the hollowed and hollow echo sounds of the campus there.
In public school education, you get what you get, you know?
That's it. And we love it. Thank you for all you do for those that are coming behind you. And we want to, are there books that folks can look for your work? I know I have one of your books. I don't know if that's the only one that you published. Do you have books that folks can look for?
That's probably I wouldn't say at the moment, but there are full-length performances online. I would say look for something called radio plays. If you can find that. Radio plays, right.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, Regie Gibson, thank you so very much. Let us know however we can support you. So when products are available, hey, I'm your connection to this part of the country. And I have a few connections overseas as well. So let me know. I'm a fan. I make no shame. I'm definitely a fan. Thank you so much. And for our Sojourn with Words viewers, thank you for joining us here on Sojourn with Words this afternoon, this evening, this morning, whenever you're catching it, because we know our encore presentations air around the clock, around the week, and we are very happy to be able to present this level of excellence to our viewership. Regie Gibson is an extraordinary individual, not just an extraordinary artist. He's doing much for the world, as he mentioned about his works during the pandemic. You'll know that these are artists of conscience when they reach out at a time that truly could be about self. And he's already indicated that the world beyond these US shores looks at poetry differently. And so we want to embrace that notion that we are a part of planet Earth. And so thank you, Regie Gibson, for dropping that kernel of wisdom. Next time, always remember, whenever you can, just pick up a pen and see what happens. I guarantee you, if you lead with your heart, but also allow your mind to channel the messages that are right there in front of you, allow all of your senses to come alive and put that word out there for the world to understand that we are all a part of this universe. We are all a part of something that can be positive if we allow it. And it's imperative, especially for our young persons, to know that they too have a role to play. They too are important. And we all are children of the arts. Sojourn with words. See you next time. Thank you, Regie.